Okay, ladies and gents, at long last, welcome to session 2 of Core Developer Skills, our latest module. Is there anybody here for the first time? One person. Welcome, welcome. So yes, as you will have gathered, this is session 2 of this module. I don't know if you're already familiar with Git. Yeah, so that's what we were covering last week. So if you're already comfortable using Git on the command line, then you haven't really missed anything for this module.
I'm familiar with the concept. I haven't used it much.
Okay, well.
For some unrelated stuff. So.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the notes, I can't remember if I've uploaded them yet. If not, I'll put the slides from last week up. And the videos on YouTube, as are all our past classes. So feel free to go and watch that. Also, for people who are perhaps watching us for the first time, I put this slide up, or a slide similar to this. You'll notice, for those who have been to several of these that I do, the slides are looking rather better than they were. So Ollie has donated his fancy PowerPoint formatting. So yes, we get nice, better looking slides today. Still the same old content, but you know. They look nicer at least. So anyway, yes, we have this Slack channel that we encourage everybody to come and join. So if you go to that URL, https://slack.cpp.al, you can put your email address in there. It'll send you an invitation to come and join the CPP Lang Slack channel. And once you've done that, you'll find a chat room in there that's called #CPP London Uni. And then you can come and talk to us, because we'd love to hear from you. So yes, everybody else has heard me say that. I don't know how many times now, but never gets boring. I'm not sure about that, but there we are. Oh, really fancy transitions and everything. This is lovely. Okay, so this module is a little bit different. It's something we haven't done before, something we haven't tried before. So you are our guinea pigs. In that, you know, you're all cute and fluffy, maybe. So as you will have gathered from the title screen, we're talking about core developer skills. This is not C++. In fact, in this module for the next few weeks, we're not going to be teaching you any new C++. We will be doing a bit of C++ today. A bit later on, you'll be doing some hacking on a little project. But it's all, if you've been following the course so far, all pretty simple stuff that you should be able to handle. There's no new C++ in this module. So we'll be looking at Git and GitHub. So last week we talked about Git. Today we're going to be talking about GitHub. Again, this is probably if you're already doing some sort of programming, you might already be quite familiar with how all this works. And if so, well, feel free to enjoy the incredible view. And yes, on that, many thanks to Primal Base and to Binary District for supplying us with this absolutely amazing space. For those who are online, I'm sorry you are missing the most incredible view in London. But yes, anyway, where was I? So this module, so this week we'll be talking about GitHub. We've got a few more things planned for the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about CMake next week. So CMake is the most common build system that's used for C++ projects. We're going to talk about using Debugger. So this is built into C-Line, the IDE we use, although it works very similarly in most other IDEs as well. Lets you kind of inspect your program at runtime, find out actually what's going on when the computer runs your program. We'll talk about using continuous integration systems. There's AppVeyor and Travis and Jenkins and these various systems that basically compile and test your software almost continuously. Usually every time you commit to the master branch, it'll kick off some server that compiles, make sure your program compiles, make sure all the tests run, and will email you or set fire to the building if it doesn't. That's what we've got so far. We've got a couple of other ideas as well. So yes, as I say, bit of an experiment, something a bit different, not specifically C++, but hopefully something that you'll find useful anyway. If you don't, and you'd rather we just went on and told you more C++, then if you paid attention on that past slide, you'd be able to tell us in the Slack channel. It's very annoying because I can't see what's coming up. I'm just going to have to read it off the screen. So last week, we were talking about Git. And Git is a distributed version control system, which is a very fancy way of saying it's something that looks after your source code, lets you manage your source code. And we looked at how we can create new repositories on the command line, how we add files to those, how we create commits, how we look at our commit history, how we create new branches, how we should create branches for new features, for bug fixes, so that we don't disturb the master branch, and then how we can go back and merge those changes again once we're happy with them. This week, we're going to be talking about GitHub. So who's heard of GitHub, first of all? I think that is literally every hand. Who's used GitHub? Almost the same hands. So excellent. You're all just going to be, as I say, enjoying the view today. But for those who haven't used GitHub before, or have sort of clicked about but not really known what they're doing, hopefully today will be quite interesting. So GitHub was, as far as I can gather, originally sort of set up as just a place to upload your Git repositories, right? And it's sort of grown all these extra facilities to help you manage your projects. So not only does it just host your repository, but it also provides issue tracking and pull requests that we'll talk about later. Does task management, to-do lists, it handles teams, it handles releases, it handles all sorts of things. And it's overwhelmingly, these days, the most common system that's used for hosting open source projects, and a lot of proprietary stuff as well. It's not the only one. There are alternative systems available. GitLab is quite popular, and Bitbucket is another one. A lot of people, particularly in the open source world, they have sort of moral objections, I suppose, to GitHub, in that the GitHub software itself is closed source and proprietary. Right, so a lot of people with strong feelings about free software with a capital F, they dislike using a closed source system to manage their projects. So GitLab and Bitbucket, they actually hosted on open source systems. So you, in principle, could go and run your own version of Bitbucket on your private server if you wanted to, or you could, make changes to it, all that sort of thing. That's not the case for GitHub. GitHub is closed source. There's also the issue that Microsoft recently bought it, and there are people in the open source world who aren't too keen on Microsoft, although they've got a lot nicer in recent years. So yes, there are alternatives. They mostly have similar functionality, but by and large, GitHub is the one people use. Until very recently, I think it was only the beginning of this year, you could only have public repositories on GitHub unless you paid. That was their business model. They hosted public repositories for free, and if you wanted their functionality, but for your own private stuff, perhaps your company's stuff, you had to pay the money. As I say, Microsoft recently acquired them, changed the business model. I'm not even sure what the business model is anymore, but you can now have unlimited private repositories. You can upload as much stuff to GitHub as you want, which is, it's pretty good. So yes, you probably already knew this, right? But good to make sure we all know the same things. So, who has a GitHub account? Who doesn't? 2, 3. 3 people, right. Well, the very first thing you need to do if you want to use GitHub is get an account. So there are going to be some practical exercises today. We're going to have a bit of fun fixing a not very good C++ project later on. And also, it's just very useful if you want to contribute to anything open source. As I say, everything uses GitHub these days, so it's good to get on there, reserve the username you want so that nobody else steals it. So if you already have a GitHub account, please just fire up your browser, log in, make sure it's all working. If you don't, then if you could head to that URL, github.com/join, it should give you a window that looks roughly like that on the right. And just create yourself an account, think up a fun username, perhaps even a temporary username so that you can think of a better one later. And I'm also going to assume that everybody was following along last week and that you have got Git installed on your laptop and you know roughly what you were doing, or at least you could follow the steps from last week. So I'll just give a couple of people who put their hands up to say they didn't yet have an account. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to fill that in, and then we shall continue. Just give me some water. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. Thanks. It won't be till later, but yeah. Okay. Is everybody done, or do you need a little more time? I'm going to need to hear one way or the other, right? Okay. No problem. No problem. Does make you realise how enormous London is, doesn't it? Looking at it. Yeah, no. It's okay, I don't want to leave people behind. So. Oh, okay. Yep. So just go. Yeah, just go next. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the defaults are. Oh no, I wouldn't do that. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're there. You've been verified. Oh yes, I forgot about that. It's been years since I did. There's a verification step, so you know it'll send you an email. The usual thing. You have to click the link to prove it's really you. Da 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 da. Okay. How's your? You're all good. Okay. We're good to go. Everybody's a GitHub member. Excellent. So now we've got an account. Well, perhaps had one already, but let's assume we now have an account. How do we use it? What can we do with it? Well, let's imagine we started work on a new project. We're very excited about it. It's really great. It's going to change the world. We can upload it to GitHub, and we can use that as a sort of cloud backup. You don't want your world-changing program to be lost just because your laptop decided to crash. You can safely store all your source code, in fact, more or less anything you want in GitHub if you try hard enough, but primarily project source code and related things, related assets in GitHub. And perhaps we want to make it public. We can allow everybody else to collaborate with us on our fantastic world-changing project. Perhaps we just want to show off. It's a pretty good thing to have on your CV, a world-changing project. You want to, make it public. Let employers or whoever take a look at it, go, wow, this is really great. As I say, back not all that long ago, this was your only option, was to make things public. Now, unless you paid, but now GitHub lets you have as many private repositories as you want, so you can just use it as the cloud backup for all your source if you so desire. So what do we need to do in order to upload our stuff to the cloud, as they say? Well, first of all, we need to be using Git. I mean, the clue is in the name there, really, isn't it? GitHub. So we need to have a local Git repository on our machine with our commits in, exactly as we went through last week. And then we need to create a repository on GitHub. Usually you give it the same name as you've got locally, just so you know what's going on. It's not an absolute requirement. But we need to create a remote repository. And after that, we need to push, in the terminology, push the commits from our local machine, from our GitHub repository on our laptop, or on your desktop, or wherever it is. We need to push those commits to the corresponding GitHub repository. So I was talking about last week that Git is a distributed version control system. So Git, in Git terms, all repositories are sort of peers in a sense. That there's no central authority, no central server in the way that you had with old systems like Subversion. So your local repository on your laptop and the one that is stored in GitHub's servers somewhere in America or wherever it is, those are completely independent. Usually your local one will know about the other one, but they're independent in the sense that either one can change at any time independently. And importantly, new commits you make locally will not automatically be sent to GitHub. Okay, this is quite important. Sometimes something people don't often think about. They often think, oh well, I've got this on GitHub, so now it's there forever, and it's like iCloud or something where any changes automatically get uploaded. That's not how Git works. Right? Your repositories are independent, and they won't change unless you push from one to the other, or pull from one. So your local changes won't be uploaded, and vice versa. Your local repository won't change to reflect the remote branch unless you tell it to. Independent. Okay, so here's a little test of how much you were concentrating last week. Again, if you're already really familiar with Git on the command line, this should take you, not very long. If it was all a bit new last week, then don't worry, we're here to give you a hand if you need it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to basically recreate what we did last week. But don't just use the same demo project from last week, because that's boring. You want to make sure you remember the steps. Repetition is how you reinforces learning, right? So create a new directory, call it GitHub demo, initialize that as a Git repo. You need to CD into the directory. Again, all this stuff from last week. We're going to just create a text file, hello world.txt. We're going to add it and commit it. And once that's ready, we're going to have a go at pushing this up to GitHub. So again, this is nothing new here. This is just what you did last week. So give that a go. And if you have any problems with that, then pop your hand up and me or Ollie will come and give you a hand. Yes, quite a good one is.
I'm following this one, but I guess there has to be somewhere.
Yeah, so Git SCM, that has a tutorial. Git, yeah.
All right.
So there's documentation. Oh no, I'll go. Yeah, I'll go back. The Pro Git book starts. I believe it starts quite gently. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it does go into very great detail as well, but it starts pretty gently. Sounds like it's on fire. I'm surprised it's like a quad core thing. Oh right, yeah. Is it not like a quad core i7? Well then, definitely shouldn't be. Yeah. Hi. Okay, you've created that. Okay, so have you? Yep, that's good. So have you got a terminal window open?
You mean one of these?
No, I mean like an actual command line.
Oh, C prompt.
Yes. Okay, so if you just, I don't know where you created that, but if you CD to that.
Well, I can just go.
No, that you need.
You'll see why I've done that.
Oh.
This is my lazy way of.
Oh. Oh, right. Very good. Oh. No, you need to change to the D drive.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's me being lazy.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So let's initialize this as a Git repository, right? So you just need to type Git init.
Okay, I wasn't here last week.
Oh, well,
So,
okay.
Git init or
Git space init.
space.
So with Git, everything is Git and a space and then the command.
Git is not recognised
Oh.
because I assume I don't have Git installed on the machine.
Okay. Right. So in that's a problem we've got to solve first of all then.
Okay.
Okay,
I assume
so
we go back to here.
yep. So the URL you want is git-scm.com, I think.
SCM.
Git no, not GitHub. Git-scm.
Dash.
I think it's .com.
Soon find out.
Yeah. That looks right. So
Git
just
stand for?
nothing. It was.
Being an old Git or something.
It's pretty much what it is. So it's invented by Linus Torvalds, who tells the joke that he likes naming projects after himself.
Assume that's where we go.
So downloads.
For Windows. Let's go for 64-bit because I'm 64-bit.
Yep. Oh, it's detected
Oh,
that
it's
autumn.
recognised now.
Yep.
Clever stuff. I'm most impressed. Run. Bless you. Running security scan. For some reason this is getting a bit slow and I think I need to put some more memory in it. It's right, demo is starting. Sounds promising. It's going to ask me for permission to do it. Next.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll go there. Use true type font or console.
To be honest, I would just go for the defaults. I usually think it's good.
Okay. Would you like to select a different font? Oh, hang on. Where's it going to go? Correct.
That's the start menu.
Okay, right. Okay. No, Vim is the Vim.
Are you familiar with Vim?
I've heard of it. I haven't got a clue what it does, but I assume is it a DOS prompt type thing?
Yes, exactly that.
So coming from that world, I can pick up on that. Git from Bash. Oh, now what's Bash?
Bash is a terminal emulator. It's one commonly used on Linux. To be honest, with all of these, I would just go for the defaults. They usually are.
So command line, that would be my C prompt.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Which one? OpenSSL or native Windows secure channel?
I don't think it makes any difference. Yep.
Right, okay.
Yep. Next. Yep.
MinTTY.
But let's switch you to
I use that one actually. I know that. Prompt window, yeah.
Okay.
Enable prompts.
Ooh.
We need to move around, that is. Then
Yeah.
it sets off the sensors. Enable Git credential. File system cache. Oh, what the hell? Install.
Yes. Hey, we got there.
Oh, it's going pleasantly fast. I thought there wasn't I thought last week didn't happen. We got one at the very
But last week we were at Mimecast, and
Because I got a message saying it wasn't going to happen.
I think it was the week before that was in doubt, but we did manage to get somewhere at the last minute.
Oh, okay.
we didn't skip any class.
We have.
We had a short, like, last week.
We are, just to say again, incredibly grateful to these guys.
There's a chat with the guy. Apparently, this is all to do with I can't remember the system that they're using, but it's all to do with bitcoins here.
Oh, right.
That's what this whole floor is dedicated to, bitcoins, or at least the system is built on it.
Cryptocurrency.
There was another name for it. I can't remember what he called it. But it's the underlying machine or engine that deals with it.
Visual Studio Code will do what you described. Yeah, VS Code does.
File 5. Like that.
Oh, yeah. Git was originally a lot of it was implemented in Perl, so you know, you'll like that.
The plumbing was C, but the wrappers, as they call them, the porcelain was
The user interface layer.
the porcelain.
And I can use this for any source code, like Perl code.
Yeah.
C++,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
VB,
Any and all.
HTML.
Yep.
Yes, Git does not care what your...
As far as Git's concerned, they're just text files.
Right.
It doesn't care about the
Next
contents.
slide is, of course, security.
security.
Excuse me. What
What do you mean by security?
Is it a relatively secure place? I mean, can I bung something up there, know that nobody's going to hack into it, or
Well, so your
as
local
much as
machine...
anything on
No, so that's beyond Git, because Git itself, right, is not... It's going to push it wherever you want. If you push your files to a public server, your files are going to be public,
Okay.
right? And if you push it to GitHub on a private repo, it's as secure as GitHub made their servers. If you keep your files in your local Git, it's as secure as your computer is, right? But the moment you give those files to someone else, because that's all it's doing, it's just uploading files to another place, it's as secure as that location is.
Right. What should I do? Launch Git Bash?
You launch Git Bash. I wouldn't bother viewing the release notes unless you are very familiar with Git. They're probably not very.
Aha. There we go.
Okay. Right. So let's go back to that directory again.
Okay. And you
Just.
said F3 and do that again.
No, because this won't have updated to know about you. You'd have to reboot. But if you go to that other window, it does know about it.
Okay.
That one that was just opened.
Right. Hang on. If I, what the hell? Yeah, we'll go there.
So one thing you can do is just right-click on that. Right-click on Hello World there.
Yeah.
Who's
You
managed
should
to do that
have.
stuff so far?
Send to.
No. Oh.
You definitely.
Oh no. It often has add to Git Bash, but never mind. Open Git Bash here is what you want.
Okay. Now then, we do go back to what I was doing before.
And just
CD and okay, that's excellent. Zap. It'll.
okay.
And it went straight in.
Just we can just list the contents of that directory, and it's got hello world.txt in it. Okay, so now we're in this directory. Now we can initialize this directory as a Git repository.
Turn it into a Git repository.
Yes. So we need to initialize this directory as a Git repository. Turn this into a Git repository. So the command for that is git init.
And it's written on the site.
Okay. Okay. So we've initialized this directory is now a Git repository. So
Nothing in it.
with it's got a hello world.txt, but
In the
In
repository.
different parlance now, is this directory mirrored on Git?
it's not mirrored as such. No, Git is sort of managing this directory now.
Okay.
You're locally versioning your files.
Yes. Yes.
But it's got nothing to do with the internet or anything.
No, we're not doing anything remotely. We're not talking to GitHub or anything yet. We're just...
The core purpose of Git is to locally verify files, right? So I create a file, change a file, I commit that change. I make further changes, I commit those as well. But the history, the previous state, is preserved. I can always roll back to it. It's a series of snapshots.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So, in a sense, I've got a directory. Git somewhere up there is aware of
No.
it.
No.
Just on your machine. Nothing to do with the internet. You don't need to be on the internet. It's completely local. You can only go to the internet when you go to the internet.
That's
Okay.
where I was coming at. In other words, it's aware of its presence, but that won't do anything.
No,
until actually
nothing,
No, it's
nothing
not
in the
aware of
entire whole of the
External,
world.
there is no external
It's not
presence.
aware of this anymore.
No.
Until I actually tell the world
Only,
somewhere.
Exactly.
only your computer is aware of it.
Yeah. Okay. So we've initialized a repository. We need to add that hello world file that you've created. We need to add that to our repository. It's in the directory, but the Git management system, we haven't told it to look after that file yet.
Which would be somewhere in this thing. I just
It doesn't matter because we can just work here. So if we go back to this terminal window, we just need to say git add,
Git 2 words.
git space add, and then just press tab, and it will. Oh, hello world should hopefully. There we are. Oh no, we only need one of them. I got a bit trigger happy there, didn't I?
You said it the first time.
Yep. So git add. So we want to add this file to our repository.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Okay, and now we can find out, we can look at the Git Status, which is one of the most useful commands there is, and it will tell us the status. It will say we've got no commits yet, but we've added a new file.
Right. Commit is the process of pushing to the...
No. Git committing is the process of taking a snapshot. So Ollie said, like a Git repository is a series of snapshots.
I'm still not fully converted.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That's why we're here. So a commit is like a snapshot of a repository at a particular time. And we have a history of the snapshots, and we can go back to any of our previous snapshots at any time. So
In a loose way, each commit has got some kind of date stamp next to it.
it's exactly what it has, yes. Right, so we need to create a commit. We need to create a snapshot. We need to so it'll list all the changes since your last commit. In this case, we've created a new file, or added this new file.
To do today's date, time, etc.
So what we're going to do is say git commit.
Okay.
And we do that, and it's going to...
Please tell me who you are.
Oh.
Who am I?
Oh, Ollie,
Configure a user in an email.
yes. Oh, do you mind doing this? Because
Yes.
we've... Okay, I think most people have managed to do this now. I hope. So we'll move on. So we're going to go on to part 2 of our little exercise. We're going to create a matching GitHub repository. Going to call it GitHub demo. Feel free to delete this again afterwards if you don't want it cluttering up your repository list on GitHub. That's fine. GitHub is really paranoid about deleting repositories. It asks you, "Are you sure?" about 17 times. Don't worry, this is not important in any way. So once we're done with this today, feel free to delete it from your GitHub. Don't get too alarmed with the very alarming warnings. So here's what we need to do. We need to go to github.com/new, or in fact, if you're on the front page, there's a button to do it, but you can also just go to the quick URL, github.com/new, while you're logged in. It'll have a little box on there. It'll say, what do you want to call it? It'll come up with a daft suggestion, but just call it GitHub demo. There'll be a little checkbox that says, initialize this repository with a README and perhaps a license file. Don't select that. Leave that unchecked. We click Create Repository. We'll move to the next screen. And in there, you'll see, I think it's GitHub lists sort of 3 options from memory. One of those is some command line instructions for how to upload an existing repository. It's 2 lines.
Git remote add is the first one.
Yes, and then git push.
First we need to do the git commit, don't we?
Well, you should have, if you followed the last one, you will have committed to your local repository, right? Yeah, make sure you've committed to your local repository first.
Is that committed?
No, there are no commits yet. Ollie can help with that. So if you follow those instructions, so there'll be git remote add followed by git push. Do those as separate steps on your command line. It might ask you for your GitHub password, depending on how things are set up. Once you've done that, once it's pushed, you'll be able to refresh the page in your browser, and you'll see, hopefully, that your helloworld.txt has been faithfully uploaded to the cloud at large. How exciting. Ooh, excellent. All working. How are you doing? Oh, excellent, excellent.
Is it good?
Yep, no, perfectly. So, we have an existing repository. So we want to push an existing repository from the command line. So we need to follow these 2 instructions. And we'll go through exactly what these instructions we're doing in a second.
I'm going to be extremely lazy and copy these.
You are highly encouraged to do so, yes.
Okay. Copy. Plan A.
Oh, no, no, no. So we have to just finish the commit. So,
I'm
so you're in the Vim editor at the moment.
Am I?
Yes, yes, this is Vim. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a... So when we create a commit, when we create a snapshot, we need to write a commit message saying...
Oh, all my previous lines have gone now, haven't they?
No, 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 they'll be back. So Vim is a bit weird, don't worry about it too much. We'll just...
Excuse me. So I've heard.
Yes.
From you
Anyway.
users.
So we've now created a commit, and our message was initial commit, which is a bit boring, but it does describe what it is. So if we go to Git Status now, we'll see we've got nothing commit because we've made no changes. And we can also look at the log. So the log is our history of commits. So if we just type log, we can see we've got 1 commit, and it was made at that date by you, and our message was initial commit.
That's 3 hours. Okay.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. But,
We are not in Turkey.
well, you're...
Hang on.
I think that is 2 hours ahead of BST.
I'm in a completely
But,
different time
well,
zone.
let's not worry about that too much now. Let's follow these instructions. So you've got that copied. So let's paste it into the terminal window.
No. Can't right click.
No, you might just be able to Control V though. There we are.
Control what?
Control V for
Okay,
paste.
yeah.
Yes. So, okay. that hasn't done anything. All this has done is told your local Git repository that this remote one exists. And we'll go over exactly what we've done in just a second. Yep. Control V. It might ask you for your GitHub username and password here.
Thinking about it.
Yeah, it's thinking.
Having trouble?
Oh, there we are. This is rather good. So you just have to.
Yes, I'll follow up tomorrow.
I haven't seen it pop up with the window before. That's quite impressive. And we're done. Excellent. So if we go back to our window over here, and then just refresh this, what we'll see is that your hello world.txt has been uploaded. And you see you've got your commit message,
Right.
got the time, you did it 7 minutes ago.
How clever is it?
Yep. We can have a look in there and it's got hello world.
Oh, one contributor.
Yep, that was you.
I hope so.
Yep. So we've successfully uploaded your commits. We all good?
That's the commit.
Yeah. Okay. So we have successfully, hopefully, everyone got hello world.txt now in that GitHub repo remotely. Excellent. So what did we actually do there? Well, we executed 2 commands. First one was this: git remote add origin git at github.com / your username / gitdemo.git. GitHub demo, I think that should be called. But anyway, what does this actually do?
Not necessarily that URL.
No, the URL would be the one that it gave you. It might have been HTTPS, depending on how you set up. But it would have been git remote add origin some URL. So what's this actually doing? Well, Git has a concept of something it calls remotes, remote repositories. And this adds a new remote, which we've named origin. And we've said that this remote exists at this URL that we've given it.
Maybe a good way to think of it is that your computer running Git has this database of remote locations, servers on the internet, such as GitHub, that you are telling it to add to the database so that you can subsequently use them, as I'm sure you're about to tell me.
Yes. So you can think of remotes as other repositories for the same project that this repository, your local repo knows about, and it gives them a name to make it easier to interact with them. Right? Because you don't want to have to go and type that URL in every time. That would be a right pain. So what you can do is you can give it a name. Give this other repo on another computer, usually on another computer. In fact, that you can perfectly well have a remote that's on the same machine if you really want to. But it will usually be on some server somewhere. Again, you don't want to have to type the URL, so you can give this other server, this other machine that has a copy of the repo, you can give that a name. And we can have any number of remotes we want. There's nothing stopping you. You can give remote add as many as you like, and as long as you give them all different names. it has to be said that number is usually 1, right? There's, unless you're doing very fancy things, you don't usually have multiple remotes, at least in my experience. Perhaps Ollie does, but yeah, he nods because he does fancy. He does fancy things with Git. In my experience, the number of remotes is typically 1. And it's typically 1 even, actually usually if you don't explicitly do this step. Because when we clone an existing repository, so if we were to clone a project from GitHub, as we'll be doing in a moment, GitHub will create a remote called origin for you. So in much the same way that when you initialize a project, it'll create a default branch which it names master. When you clone a repository, it'll create a remote for you, and it will name that origin. You can rename that if you want to, or point it to a different URL. There are many things you can do with remotes. Yes. Most commonly, though, what you'll do is just add a default upstream, as we call it. Yeah, there's nothing special about the name origin, it's just convention. In the same way that the master branch has no special meaning to Git, it's just another branch, right? It's just convention that we call it master, and we think of it as the most important branch. But as far as Git is concerned, all branches are equal, and the master branch is not in any way special. And again, there's nothing special about a remote called origin. It's just another remote as far as Git is concerned. It's just sort of convention that we think of origin as being where we got this from. So we informed our local Git database that there is somewhere another machine which has another copy of our repository. And then the second line we executed was git push -u origin master. Well, let's forget about the -u for a second. Just imagine it said git push origin master. That's telling Git to push commits from our local branch, from our local master branch, onto the remote that we have named origin. So push to origin, our branch named master. And as you might be able to guess, you can substitute, if you've got multiple remotes, you can substitute the name of the remote where origin appears. And if you wanted to push a different branch, which is pretty common, you could change the branch name. So we've pushed the master branch, which is the default branch. But if you have a feature branch that you want to, push to the cloud, you can do that just as well. No, you have to give it a name. So what's that -u do? Well, -u is basically just a shorthand to help us out. It's a short version of the longer command is -- set upstream. And what that does is it associates origin as the default push location for our master branch in this case. So in future, if we made more commits to our master branch and we wanted to upload those changes to GitHub or to our origin, we wouldn't have to say git push origin master again. We could just say git push because we've set a default remote branch that is associated with our local branch.
We asked Git to remember its original instruction.
Yes, to remember which arguments we used here so that in future we can just say git push and it will just happen. I think it works. But So by default, Git is very safe and conservative, well, in most respects. And if you try to push changes and your local repository and the remote repository have diverged, if there have been other commits to the remote repository so that it no longer looks like yours, yes. If there is a situation that would risk losing commit history, that would change history in such a way that information would be lost, Git won't let you do it. It'll come up with a fairly cryptic thing that says it's a non-fast forward error. That means that it couldn't just, yes, fast forward through the history effectively. This is really, really common. And it's just generally easily resolved by first, immediately before you push, just pull to get the latest changes from the remote repository. So pull, you might guess, is the opposite of push. So push says send my changes over there. Pull says get my changes from over there and apply them to my local repository. We push and we pull from the other machine, from the other repository.
Does know what fast forward is? We've got two. Can I go explain it then?
I think it means basically it'll just fast forward your current branch straight up to the master branch. And if there's no clashes or anything.
Precisely, because there's no clashes. Yeah. So a fast forward is when the server, the remote end, is at this point in time, and you want to set it to your new changes, your new data, new content at this point in time in the future. If there's no conflict, it can go straight there. That is a fast forward, right? If somebody else put their own changes in there that you didn't do, right? So now they've got their own stuff, you've got your own stuff. That's no longer a fast forward because those two divergent histories would have to be reconciled, and that's when it refuses to push.
Yes. I just wanted to first. Yeah. So usually this can be reconciled, this can be fixed by just pulling before you push. Get the latest changes, then send yours. There is another way, but you really don't want to use it. You can say git push -f, force my changes through. Don't do this. Or at least don't do this if this is a shared repository.
Caveat. Don't do this if it's a shared branch. If you're working on a feature branch of your own, nobody should be touching your unique feature branch because it's just the little thing you're working on. You should always be free to force push to that because maybe you did some changes, then threw them away and rewrote the history because you decided something was garbage. You could force push to your personal feature branch in that repo, but do not touch any branches that are shared. So master, develop, whatever your company or organization or friends use. But your personal stuff is your personal stuff, your personal branch.
Yes, perhaps where I said shared repository, I should have said shared branch. Yes, in general, force pushing is something that's it's one of those red flags. You should only do it when you have to. And I mean absolutely have to. And never ever do it on a shared branch because you will mess up everybody else's checkouts. Because you have effectively rewritten history of the remote branch. You have forced it to rewrite history. And that history will no longer match up with what other people's view of that branch is.
Basically, the error that you get, or would have gotten when you don't force push, which is non-fast forward, is the error that everybody else is now going to get when they try and fetch the changes, which is quite annoying, because that should never happen.
No. No, no, no. So be very, very, very careful with this -f. So is everybody sort of fairly comfortable with this idea of pushing our commits, our list of changes from our local Git repository out to a matching repository somewhere else, say on GitHub servers, and then pulling any remote changes from over there to our local checkout? I'm going to take your wall of silence as a yes. The really important takeaway is that these two things don't stay in sync automatically. Right? It's a manual operation in Git. It's not like, something like OneDrive or iCloud or whatever, where the two things stay in sync just magically behind the scenes. That's not the way Git works. This is explicit. You have to explicitly push changes out and pull changes back in. Okay, let's change tack a little bit and go from the sort of lower level Git stuff to just slightly higher level ideas. Open source projects. The world is now full of them. There's like exponential growth of open source. It's incredible. And as I mentioned earlier, GitHub is overwhelmingly these days the most popular choice for where people want to host their open source software. There are alternatives, and some sort of hardcore free software people don't like GitHub, but by and large, 95% of the world, if they're writing software, they want to make it open source. They want other people to be able to look at the source code, to be able to commit changes, to be able to suggest changes to it. They host it on GitHub. It's got lots and lots and lots of facilities to help people writing open source software. It's getting more and more and more, in fact. So it's got bug tracking, contribution management, that is pull requests, forks that we're going to talk about in a moment. You do code reviews. You can have task lists, milestones. You can have organizations with many people in them, release management. There's a whole wealth of things. This is used for really, really, really large projects as well. Thousands of contributors and millions of lines of code. It's really very, very good. There's a reason everybody likes it, basically. So we're going to have a look at a sort of imaginary open source project, something I wrote in, literally 5 minutes. Right, it's a really, really important bit of open source software that I don't know how the world has lived without for so long. It's called pad left. This absolutely bears no relation to any real-world library that may or may not have existed in JavaScript. Just so we're clear, it's a completely new invention. So let's have a quick look at pad left. If we go to that URL, github.com/cpplondonnews/padleft. It's a C++ library which has one function in it that does one thing. You give it a string, and you give it an int, and it returns you a new string with that many spaces at the start of your string.
Question: have you put this up, uploaded the binaries to Conan?
I have not yet. I really should. Yes. See how many people depend on it. So for those who don't know, what we're joking about is in the JavaScript world, in the Node.js world, there was. Is it still there?
It was taken. Go on, tell the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So there was a library that was committed into. You could grab it with npm, which is a Node.js package manager for Node JavaScript, and it was called string left pad. And it does exactly what this slide says. It puts X number of spaces in front of your string, which is fairly simple to do. You should be able to figure that out yourself, not grab a package to do that. Anyway, it was a package. And one day, the author of said package decided that he was going to have a hissy fit and take it down. And it broke an embarrassing number of Node.js projects.
We're talking tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Several that were open source. Private companies were affected by this. It had an extremely large impact. And the maintainers and the executives of the Node organization said, we're going to take the unprecedented step of restoring this package. We do respect authors' rights, but in this particular case, due to the damage, we're going to restore it because he releases under a license that says that the copy we have, we can legally do this. And it's never happened since, but it does make a very good point, which is that if something is incredibly trivial, probably it's a bad idea to use it as a library when you could have just written it yourself and not created that level of risk, shall we say.
So this is literally a one-line function, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands perhaps, of projects were depending on this absolutely trivial thing. It's sort of ridiculous. Yes?
Is there like a trend, or has there been a trend in programming or in C++ generally to draw on libraries as a kind of instant go-to to fix things?
Do you want to answer that, or shall I?
Less so in C++ than in many other languages. So C++ really doesn't have a good story with package management. So something like JavaScript or Python or Ruby or Swift or Rust or basically any other language that isn't C or C++. They have a sort of de facto standard package manager where you can very easily, very easily integrate other people's code into your projects. That tends to be a bit harder in C++, but nonetheless, there are lots of very good libraries out there that get used a lot, but we don't have the same kind of package management thing that most other languages do, not yet at least.
So actually we have something called Conan. We do. Conan was recently bought by JFrog. Conan is really good, actually. It's aware of architectures, it's aware of build types, optimization levels. You can actually use Conan. It has a very big base. However, within the community, the trend is to prefer source-only libraries. So you tend to prefer to just grab the source code yourself, keep your own copy of it, and just build it yourself, which is unlike the node mechanism where you're grabbing it from a remote server every time you build. You'll keep your own copy. So if the author has a hissy fit, you don't care because you grabbed it ages ago, right? This is a different paradigm. Conan is somewhat different. If you came to rely on Conan, you potentially could end up in the same situation as happened with string left pad. But Conan is a great resource, nonetheless. Usually for your own packages rather than third-party libraries.
Sure.
Yes, obviously in C++ world, we generally just grab the source and make it out.
Well, I have to say, I've heard of Conan. I haven't actually used it personally, but hey, Ollie, that sounds like a really good topic for one of our core dev skills sessions. Yeah. So there's this repository pad left, and one of the things we could do is we can go to that URL. If you're logged into GitHub, you'll see a little button that's marked clone or download. If you click that, you'll see it'll give you a URL that you can use with git clone. And we could clone this repository, and we could make a copy of it on our local machine. And if we did that, it would set the origin as that URL there, or that repository there. And that would be fine. If all we wanted to do was use this software, we could do that. That wouldn't be a problem. The trouble is that if we just did that, we don't have, or you don't have, rights to modify any of CPP London Uni's repositories, right? So you cannot write any changes back to this repository. If you try, Git will just say, no, can't do it. Not allowed. You don't have the authorization to do this. So what happens if we find a problem in pad left that we want to make the authors aware about? I mean, what kind of author would write a function like this and get it wrong? I can't possibly think. So, just imagine hypothetically that there might be a slight problem with the pad left library. And that we want to, first of all, I forgot about this bit, we need to make the author aware of it. Sadly, our one-line library is not perfect. So, if you have this up on your screen, you'll be able to navigate to the padleft.cpp file, and you can see the implementation, and you'll see we're not doing this in a very good way. Oh, Ollie, have you got the, which one's the?
Check out the web page.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's because your mouse, right? You need to move the mouse over here. That's not working. 1 second, we're having technical issues. It's behaving itself now.
Ah, there we are. Awesome. Let's go to source and pad left. So this is the file I'm talking about. Some really complex C++ in there. What's wrong with this? Can anybody see what this is doing wrong? I know I said we weren't going to be doing any C++. That wasn't quite what I said. I said we're not going to be doing any new C++. This is something that you know, most people who've been following along with the course should be familiar with. So I've already given you the clue that this is a bit inefficient. Does anybody know why? Okay, so I'll tell you. The problem is this line here. What we're doing is we're creating a new string. We're taking our existing string out. We're adding a space to the start of it, which creates a new string. And then we're overwriting out with this new string. So every time we go through this loop, we're creating a new string and copying it over our old one. This is not the best way of doing things. The best way would just be to chuck all the spaces in one go. So all our many thousands of users of pad left are going to be very disappointed with the performance of our highly important function. We better make the owners of pad left aware of just how badly they've coded this function, I think. You agree? And I now cannot flick back to... oh, okay, right, fine. All right, so here's where my phone goes mad because everybody tells me my code is rubbish. Just head there, go to github.com, that URL, the issues, and just tell me that left pad is a bit rubbish. And the reason I'm getting you to do this is basically just so you're kind of familiar with the interface, with how it works. Because submitting bugs to projects is how they improve. Yes, legitimate bugs, but by and large, the owners of open source projects, they know their software isn't perfect, but they don't necessarily know the pain points for end users. Because perhaps you're using it in a configuration that they haven't tried. Perhaps you're using their library in a way that is a bit different to their tests. Perhaps you're using it in combination with some other software in a way that's problematic. The only way that open source gets better is by people, firstly, saying what the problem is, and secondly, going ahead and fixing that. There's a, I'm not sure, was it Eric Raymond who has this famous saying that with enough eyes, all bugs are shallow. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but it's a very famous sort of maxim, promotion, advertisement for open source software. It's the idea that if enough people have the source code available to them, they can go and have a look. So if we fire, so hopefully I will get new alerts. Oh, I did.
You're going to spam all of us.
Yeah, I could have just made this a personal repository.
You should have used CPP London using Classroom.
Never mind.
Just get rid of it after it.
Yeah, this repository's not hanging around for very long. So what makes a good bug report? Any suggestions to what makes maintainers happy? What kind of information should we include?
To say what the problem is and how to fix it.
How to replicate.
Well, if you know how to fix it, that's a very good step. Very often, you won't necessarily know how to fix it. Maybe you need to be an expert in how that particular software works. In order to know how to fix it. Obviously, if you can suggest a fix, that's even better. And we'll see how you can propose fixes in a moment. But saying what the problem is well, that's kind of that's a pretty obvious step one. But being pretty specific about what the problem is. A bug report that says X doesn't work is no help to anybody. But if you say, oh, I get this error message when I do these steps, that's much, much better. So steps to reproduce is really what you want to include. Be very specific about what the error is, what the problem is, and provide steps to reproduce. And try to cut down on any sort of needless information. Make it as short and self-contained as you can, but provide the necessary information. Be concise.
And of course, there are scenarios where it won't be reliably reproducible, and just try to give as much information as you can in those particular cases.
Yeah. So hopefully by now I've got a couple of issues. Let's have a look. Oh, I've got 3 of them. 15 people in the room, 3 of you have, never mind. Bad left too inefficient. Found a bug. Everything bad, please fix it. Thanks very much. Something weird here. That's the best. Oh, we're getting more. We're getting more. Oh, we've got a proposed fix.
It's not supposed to do it, but
Well, we're going to see in just a moment. So we've now submitted issues. Now the maintainer is aware, is aware that there are problems with our library. Oh no, what are we going to do? Well, luckily this software is open source. The source code is there, it's available to anybody. And in particular, anybody is able to go and submit, well, propose changes to the library. Let's flick back over here. So the way that GitHub handles proposing changes, it's a system called forking and pull requests. So, as I said before, we can certainly, if we want to, we can clone the remote repository, you can have it locally, and we can just fix the issues on our local machine. That's fine. We can do that. Really, we want to upload those changes to the world at large. But we cannot, well, I can. The rest of the world cannot commit to this upstream repository. So GitHub has this system that it calls forking and pull requests to try and make this process as easy as possible. So the first step is what GitHub calls forking. So a fork, in GitHub terminology, is a clone of an existing repo that is stored in GitHub. So we can clone a repository onto our local machine, but what we can also do is fork an existing repository on GitHub, and that will then create a copy in our GitHub workspace. And once it exists there, then we can clone our copy, and that copy belongs to us. The fork belongs to us. So we can upload to that fork just as we like. Yeah?
So the key principle is that cloning is when you want to bring the data down to your computer, your laptop, your PC, whatever. Forking is when you want GitHub to internally create a copy of something else on GitHub for you that you can edit, but it is still on GitHub.
Yes.
Forking is local purely to GitHub. It does not magically come down to your laptop.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can fork to repo if you need to. For example, like you could fork, create a clone, and then repo that to someone to work on.
No, forking is just an operation that happens purely in GitHub's world. Right? It's nothing doesn't happen on your local machine at all. It just happens out there on GitHub servers. It says, take this existing project and make a copy of it that belongs to me.
So what's the purpose of why do we have like a copy and fork?
Okay, what's the purpose of this? It's Tom's question. Well, the purpose of it is that you don't have write access to my repository. So any changes you make, you can't directly put on my repo. But what you can do is you can have write access to your copy of it. So you create a fork, that's your copy of my repository. You can now make changes to that and save those changes in your workspace.
Does it also usually know that you created the fork?
The original owner can look and see how many people have forked the project. Yes. Can they prevent forking? No, no, you can't. So for public repositories, it's part of GitHub's terms of service. You have to allow people to fork the repositories. For private repos, obviously, they're private. Nobody else can access them, so nobody else can fork them.
This part of GitHub's terms of service is literally pointless. If you have a public repository, disallowing forking would achieve nothing because they can just clone it, create a brand new repo with the same name, push, and they have the equivalent of a fork anyway.
So what's the difference between clone and fork?
So the difference is that it's just more convenient, more efficient for you. Because if you do a fork, GitHub knows about it, right? GitHub is clever and it will say, oh yes, you originally forked this. So if you stick some changes in your fork, it will be like, would you like to propose merging these back to the original guy's stuff? Whereas if you don't do that and you do this manual process I just described, where you clone it locally and then create a brand new repo on GitHub and manually push it up there, GitHub now knows nothing about it, which then means that you can't propose to merge it into the other guy's stuff because you circumvented that process. So forking is for convenience, that's all.
Yeah. What I meant really was by the terms of service is you're not allowed to have code that has a license clause that says you may not click the fork button. So
Just one more thing.
yeah.
In open source, that is fair game or the kind of implicit rules in terms of...
No, it's more than fair game. It's encouraged.
Right.
It's encouraged to go and do this in order to, as we'll see in a moment, submit change propose changes to the main project. So in this little second bullet point here, there is, or the pre-GitHub, in the pre-GitHub days, there was this notion of forking that was seen as a fairly divisive, unfriendly thing to do. Right? GitHub has somewhat changed the meaning of what it means to fork some piece of open source software. So it used to be seen as a bad thing to do, you know, very unfriendly, dividing the community up, all of that stuff. Nowadays, GitHub terminology, forking is just creating my own personal copy on GitHub.
Do you have to copy the whole thing? Like what happens if it's a very large repo and you just want to change something?
The fork is stored on GitHub, right? So it's their disk space and you don't care, basically. And in any case, it won't literally, you know, they're pretty smart. It won't literally eat up several more gigabytes of their space.
Every single file onto your hard drive.
You have to do that either way.
Yes.
Right. Doesn't matter whether you
Doesn't matter if you clone the original or clone your fork, you're still going to need the entire history on your local machine. And yes, this can be large in some cases. And there are sort of ways around it, but if you do that, it sort of limits other pieces of Git functionality.
I mean, if it's a very large repo, that's a separate issue from it being, say, a modestly sized repo with a massive history.
Yeah.
If I have a repo that's 50 megabytes, but its history is so big that all their changes to the beginning time are 2 gigabytes, 5 gigabytes, whatever, those are separate issues. You can do what's called a shallow clone, and then you don't actually grab the entire history, you grab a small chunk. But if it's got a small amount of history, but actually just the entire repo is huge, you just have you've got to grab all of it in order to make a change that's going to be massive. These are all GitHub techniques, which we'll go through as well. Why you shouldn't be using GitHub to store massive amounts of data.
Yeah, so GitHub really, really, really encourages you to fork stuff. In fact, it's literally a single click on any Git repository, any GitHub page. If you go to the repo's landing page, you'll see somewhere in the top right corner, there's a button marked fork, and there's a little number on it which tells you how many people have forked this repo so far. So let's create our own copy, or your own copy, of pad left that we're going to fix, we're going to make better. And we're going to submit those changes upstream. So you've probably already got this open in a browser window. Several people have done it already. So if we've done that, we now have, in your own personal GitHub workspace, you have a copy of this repository. And that copy is personal to you, and you have both read access and write access to your fork of pad left. Oops, wrong button. So what this means is you can make changes to your fork and then upload those changes to GitHub. So we're going to have a go at doing that. So first of all, you need to clone your pad left repo onto your local machine.
You'll know that it's yours because at the top of the page, well, not right at the top, but you should see your username / and the clone and the repo name, which is pad left. If you see CPP London Uni, you've done something wrong.
Yes.
And if you're not sure, just ask.
So I want you to clone the project, open it up in CLion, or whichever editor you prefer. Change pad left, the pad left function this is. Change it to make it better, improve it, fix this bug that so many users have reported. It's an egregious bug that's ruining this very, very useful project. When you're done, commit those changes to your local repository. And finally, push those commits from your machine into your GitHub workspace. So we've got quite a few things to do here. But some people have gone ahead and done it already, I've just noticed, so you're well ahead of the game. Sorry? No, I don't think we've got any PRs yet.
Everybody's on track. Anyone left behind?
So when you're trying what was this, downloading all the
Cloning, Git is going to clone a local copy of the entire history of that repository. So that's the URL. You want to copy that to your little board. And then you go to your terminal. This one. Yes. And you pretty much want to go up to your desktop folder. So cd .w got it. Home directory, that's fine. And then you can do git clone. Paste the URL. And then you can change into the so the folder is now Padlet on
Hi.
I've got this. That's my version,
Okay, so,
which actually I kind of did it in a totally
Okay.
different sort of thing.
well, then it might not work. Well, I did, you know,
Yeah, I didn't know how to pull it down. It didn't seem to.
well, that's why we're here.
Yeah, it did this.
Okay, so grab the URL, just copy it to your clipboard. And then how you
Let's just
git
click on there.
bash.
Yep. So we'll just copy that.
You're in, okay, so CD.
That's where it should have gone.
Yeah, copy that.
Yeah, okay.
Goes up one level.
Then
And then git
what
pull.
we're going to do
Aware of.
is we're going to
Control V that.
Do you know how to paste in this UI?
we're going to just so we're now in
Paste it.
D project C++ London Uni, and we're going to go git
Hit enter.
clone.
And as you can see, it's cloning into Padlet, so you can now CD into the Padlet folder.
So we're going to clone that URL. It's cloning into pad left.
Tab with it if you want. Just type pad and hit tab.
Okay, so now we've got a directory. You're in exactly the same step as her. So cd pad
And
left,
you're in there. You're in your Git repo now.
and we now have a Git repository that's got these files in it.
Let me scoot around.
We can do Git Status. We can say
You're editing. Okay.
our branch is up to date with the origin, so we've got a remote called origin.
Give it
And if you open this directory,
Well, it's here actually. If no, sorry. Why is that down? It's here. There you go.
okay. Well, let's have a look in here.
GitHub demo should be.
No,
Open
pad
it.
left. So we created, and now we've got all these same files you just saw in your browser.
Okay.
Okay, so what we want to do,
So go to source.
yep, and open that one. Oh, well,
Right. Well, I'll actually bother with that. So I can change that now.
change it as you like.
Okay. It's already been changed, but I've now got to do this. Yeah, I've got C-line though.
Sorry.
I've got C-line.
Okay.
Can I just drag it into here?
Well, if you go to File and Open Project, open that, yep.
And okay, I've now got to. Oh, come on, where are we?
It's on the D drive.
Oh, there's my D drive.
Yep.
Okay, open them up.
So now it's new project folder.
And
CPP C++ London Uni, I think was the directory.
yes, but I've got two projects.
Ah, yes, sorry. That's the one.
And
Pad left. And now if you just go to OK,
this window. Done.
No? Okay, good.
Come on, baby.
Here we are. Okay.
Are we there?
Just give it a second. So yeah, we can now go in there.
It says loading.
Yep, source.
SRC, yep. There we go. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to cheat completely. Simply that I've already done it.
Do you want me to tell you or do you want me to do this? Don't look at the constructors specific string.
No, cancel.
Or whatever you like to use.
Okay.
Don't look at what constructors it has. Still string.
I've got them down.
Solution is that you should construct as a string with spaces, the argument, one first argument and a number of spaces, the second argument, and then append that to append the
That is absolutely. There are so many different ways of doing it.
data string voice to move.
Well, no, you can't. It's a constref, but yes. It's,
Probably say yeah, that's what it's called. But yeah, okay, but still, that's the best
Yeah.
you get.
So are you talking about this?
Save it.
Anyone on 100?
You got it.
That's my new version. Right, I've commented a couple of things out, but the essential thing is
okay, so
that.
if we just press the play button over here, that's the
yep.
one. And you'll see I included some tests in my very useful open source project.
Oh, clever.
So it's going to go ahead and go ahead and build it first of all. Oh, so we've got an error. So you've commented out the declaration of this variable. So it now.
Oh, God, yes, I haven't got. Yep, you're right. I shouldn't have done that.
Oh no, well,
Well, strictly speaking, out. Yeah. Okay.
so there are many ways that you can do this left padding. By the way, there's no one completely right answer on this. How are you getting on over here? This is rubbish. Oh.
That was already there. I didn't write that.
Oh, you know why? Because Tom has write access to. You committed to the CPP London Uni repository. He's the. So me, Ollie, and Tom are the ones with write access to that repo. So.
I shouldn't have access because that's what I'm doing. So apologies.
So if you've got a comment saying this is rubbish, that wasn't there originally. That was courtesy of Mr. Brezer over there.
I was just
Depending on what.
Yes.
This is how you bother initializing this. I can actually say return SPC plus STR, can't I?
You can, that's a minor optimization. Look at constructors. Yes, look at what constructors still string has. There is constructors
It's still building. Can't take that long, surely.
Oh, it has to. The first time you do it, it has to build catch as well. So it takes a little. The very first time you do it, it takes a while. I think it's MinGW. I think it's MinGW. I think it's MinGW.
Doesn't have one?
you had to grab one. You have to grab one yourself.
Oh, you must be using. Oh, come on, wakey. What am I using? VC++.
Yeah.
Visual Studio.
So don't worry. The first time
It'll
you.
take its time.
Yeah. So there are some tests. You can run those tests. Make sure you haven't broken the library.
Well, it's catch. It's a big testing framework. It's probably UCC though, because the linking shouldn't be that slow. If you use MSVC,
I don't know. I haven't been down there. If there are, if you could grab me a Coke, that would be much appreciated.
That's fine, yeah.
So then we just want to run it to see what the error is or what's wrong.
You want to execute it.
Execute it. That's what we want to do.
Did you download the file? Yeah, let's go. Okay, so
So it turns out the GitHub bits are no problem. It's the compiling C++ that is a bit more of an issue for people. It's not really, the C++ was not the key bit. That was, the reason I put that in was, you know, just to sort of remind people that that is why we're here. Hi. Okay.
Is it okay? Is it and the same link here?
Okay, so when you initially downloaded it,
I've pushed a pad
When?
which one? So you went in here.
into my
Yes.
So this is your version of pad left.
Yes.
Okay, so did you clone this version of your pad left?
So I've created
Well, so
then I
yes.
could work
So let's try just a Git Pull first of all to see what it does.
This is the test one, isn't it?
in isolation of us. So
Well,
that
I
is
do.
your copy
I
of
did only Git
the
Pull.
Yeah, okay, so as I said, when you get one of these strange non-fast forward, just try Git Pull and then we can try Git Push again.
with a repo.
you bring the repo to your local machine,
Oh.
your PC, your Mac, whatever.
Yeah.
Change it as you see fit, and then when you wish
Huh.
to, you can send that back up to GitHub,
Okay.
to your local, your personal copy that lives on GitHub.
Yeah.
Right, so you
Well,
have
so
three
change
three
CPP
copies,
file.
right? There's ours
Yeah.
on GitHub.
Yeah.
There's yours on GitHub,
Yeah.
and there's yours on your computer.
And that's the repo.
Right, so 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So then when you change it on your computer,
Happy that it worked.
you can then at some point send that back up here.
Yeah.
Don't worry
And
about
once it's
this.
sent back up to GitHub, GitHub's web interface
Oh.
lets you suggest that we take those changes.
Creates for the spaces only.
So obviously it's not possible.
Oh, okay. So,
But you can overstring.
what have we got?
I see.
You've added some files to the repository.
Maybe line edit.
Yes.
As human beings, right? We just look at your code, go, is it good?
Right. And if it's useful, you take it. If it's
But I'm not quite sure what you've done because you should have your log is only showing one commit, whereas it should be showing my initial commit as well. So you should have something I did,
I would need a
maybe something Tom did as well. Thanks, Tom. And then your commit on top of that. So I'm not really sure how we've.
with a repo.
Well, I just.
Unless you're incredibly amazing,
So
then yes, you
may
probably
I
do
just
want to
delete
Okay.
everything?
Yeah. Let's just start again, shall we? So
imagine code.
I'm gonna. Does that create? No, I was trying to create.
Well,
Let's. Okay. So what we're going to do now.
so I already have this spot left.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is we're just going to go here. This is your.
Is that trying to push it or just trying to
So
work out?
we're going to copy that. That's just that button just as copy.
Okay.
Yep. So now, which
URL.
yeah, which one was it? This one. Yeah. So now we're going to go git clone that, and it's going to tell us, oh, pad left. If we try that, pad left already exists. So we're going to give it another. We're going to call it pad left 2.
Yeah, or
So if we now cd
that's my solution.
pad left 2,
Can I git init?
no,
Yeah.
it's already, so it's a Git repository already.
It has a constructor that you just
So we can do Git Status.
throw in a
You'll see we're up to date with.
Well,
If we do Git log,
character and then it will just do it that many times.
Git log. You see we've got.
Pick what you like, dark
initial
or light.
commit, so that's yours.
That's mine. That's Tristan Brindle. And then we had a very helpful one from Tom. So if we now go into C line, and we can
You can always change it again. It's a matter. Right, here we go. Now we get interesting.
open
None of that crap.
pad left 2,
Got it. Excellent. Keep going.
and we'll do it in a new window.
The default's fine. Yeah, you keep going.
Did you just test it like this or what?
And you can.
Test it. I don't know how to use your ID.
Free.
Never used it.
So this is a function that is not
Well, so I can just copy changes from
Yep, absolutely.
and then do commit, yes?
Yeah, and then we need to first add your changes, and then commit your changes to your local repository, and then push those changes upstream. Yeah.
It's finished with an exit code 0.
All right, so that's
I mean,
good.
it works?
Yep. Okay, so it really doesn't matter what the changes are. Let's just get them committed. So if we now do Git Status, you can just type the first few letters and press Tab if you like. But
I understand.
okay. Yep. So we'll see. We'll ignore those directories because those aren't things we want to upload. So we've modified this file. So we're going to make a new commit. That is, take a new snapshot of our repository. So we need to tell it that we want to add this change to our new snapshot. So git add source pad left.
Okay.
So, okay, now if we do status again, we'll see, okay, we've modified, it's gone green. Green means it's in our next changes to be committed.
Okay.
See, that one's changes not staged for commit, this one is committed. It's
Still a bit of red there.
yeah, but we don't care about those. We don't want to upload those. Those are just things C-Line did. Yeah. So now we need to do the same thing with creating a new snapshot, a new commit. No. So if we just do that, and Vim is going to pop up again.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to create a new commit message, which update .cpp. And then
Oh, the bit underneath is Vim editor in action. The top is a command line, is it?
yes, well, not quite. No, Vim is a very, very strange editor. It's very annoying that it.
A lot of
Yeah.
Unix people have told me this.
So now we've created this new commit. Git, right? So one file changed. You added 22 new lines, and you deleted 7 lines.
That's pretty good of me.
Yeah. So if we go git log, you can see we've now got 3 commits in this repository. We've got the first one that was me this afternoon. Then Tom did a commit to the main repository, and now you've created one, a third one. Okay. So
Tom, when did we start module 1?
originally,
It was last year, wasn't it?
oh yeah, September last year.
September last year, yeah. So we've been going for a while, but we're doing the modular format,
So I just,
Oh,
if we,
so
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
go back there again.
yeah. There's just one more thing I needed to do. So if you now go,
do you know any other programming languages at all? Or just starting?
so if we go git push, because everything you've done so far is just on your local machine, just on this machine. So we need to
My committing has actually still said everything's
just on here. Remember, nothing happens until you do. Nothing goes online until we do push. But if we do this, it's going to tell her. Oh no, it's going to. Oh, it works. Excellent. You might ask for your username again. It may do. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm denied.
Oh.
Unable to access.
Oh.
So
So you cloned the main CPP London Uni, not your fork.
I believe I did.
Yeah. So that was the thing. You had to clone your fork on GitHub. Well, we're running close to time. So
I keep losing it and I have to go back.
Uni on GitHub.
there's just a button marked follow, I think. Are you
have to follow a specific repo.
Oh yeah, you can follow a specific repository. Yes, I don't.
I keep looking for this and I have to go back.
Yeah, you can watch. Watch is the
Here.
yeah, but you can watch users as well. I don't know if you can watch organizations. I'm probably never going to make any releases, so
I figure out your test. I was tripping on the
minus
minus 22.
22.
Right for the string length minus 22.
Yeah.
You said you trying to send the length of
Oh, right, yes, yes.
it took me a while. I was like
I needed to make sure if somebody gave a negative.
yeah. Fix it, yes. Done.
Check the status just to make sure.
So it's like, how can we get them to show here? Because I guess this is all the projects that you follow somehow, right?
No, these are all of yours, the ones that belong to you. Yes.
But if I'm following,
No, that's following because you can follow people and you can watch repositories.
so how do you track
So if you want to,
that is relevant for you,
okay.
other people, but you don't want to modify it
Um,
without forking?
So you can watch repositories, and then every time there's a change, you'll get a notification.
Right, but it won't show here, right?
No, this is your homepage.
Okay.
But if you go to here, you'll get. See, this is your sort of news feed about what's happening on GitHub. So any changes to pad left will now appear here.
Right.
Although I think you said you only wanted to watch releases. So if
Alright, so I can watch
if we
everything,
watch
right?
everything,
Okay, because I was thinking if there's a way to kind of have a list of the places you want to visit, but not being notified every time something changes. For example, I was using, the first time I used this was for doing something with lip motion. I don't want to be getting
exactly. You normally, with big repositories, get hundreds of bug requests a day. It can be far too much to be notified of everything.
the way is to get notified, that's how you track it.
Yeah, if you submit a bug report, you will be notified of any messages anybody else
Regarding that, yeah.
regarding that. You'll get an email from GitHub if you've got that configured. Have we got time to do this? Perhaps. Who has successfully managed to upload some changes to GitHub? Well, Tom, you managed to.
Right, sorry, before I apologize, honestly I apologize. I don't know what I'm doing, so that's the reason.
Okay, so when you fork something on GitHub, GitHub knows that the two repos are related. It knows that you have created a copy of the upstream. So it allows you to submit what it calls a pull request to the original owner. It allows you to notify the original owner that you have made changes in your repository. It says to the owner, please copy these changes from my fork to yours. And I was going to show you this interface on the website because it's quite good. We'll do it at the start of next week. The owner can have a look at the proposed changes. They can make comments. They can request changes. They can reject it outright if it's obviously not any good. There are a whole manner of things that the owner can do when they receive pull requests. And what's very common, what commonly happens is that you'll work and you'll submit pull request to some library, and the owner will say, yeah, in general, I like this, particularly if it's attached to a bug report. The owner will say, yeah, I like this, but could you just do this little thing in a different way? And then you will go and you will update your local repo, your GitHub fork. And GitHub's very smart, and once you have submitted a pull request, it will, in a sense, watch your fork, and any changes will automatically become part of that pull request, so you don't have to send a new one. And eventually, you go through this a few times, back and forth, and eventually the owner will say, yeah, I'm happy with this is brilliant, thanks very much. And they'll click a little green button that's called merge, and then that's it. All your changes from your fork get slurped back into the original upstream project. It's quite a good feeling when that happens, especially if it's something that you had no idea about until a few days before, and suddenly you're done it, brilliant. And no, there is actually a really, it's kind of the motivation. why people get involved in this. There's a feel-good factor involved in working with open source about getting your changes in there. You're like, yes. So eventually, hopefully, the author, the owner, team, if it's a big project, will accept your changes.
And it can't hurt your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you get changes into something very famous, you know, it's a feather in your cap, particularly if it's something that's notoriously difficult to get changes into, like the Linux kernel or something.
It does depend on what your changes are as well. If you fixed a typo in documentation, that's not as valuable as actually adding a feature or fixing it.
Okay. So we are out of time, alas. So what I would like you to do over the coming few days, until next week, I'd like you to try and think up the most efficient way that you can to left pad a string. Perhaps you have other suggestions for what could be added to this very useful pad left library. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could pad right? Perhaps if you're feeling very fancy, you could have an overload that takes an R-value reference for that extra bit of left pad efficiency. If you want to, you can submit pull requests for these things. And when we reconvene next week, we'll have a little look at the pull requests that people have managed to come up with, and we'll see how good we can make left pad as a group.
But then if it's right pad, then you should change the name.
So today we've had a look at using GitHub, how to use it in tandem with Git on our local system. We've had a go at submitting issues, working with forks, and of course, hopefully, when you're done, submitting pull requests to other projects. So next week, my bad, I forgot when I was writing this, we do have a guest coming next week. So in fact, this is probably not what we will be covering next week. It's what I had planned because I had forgotten that we have a guest speaker next week. So this will be the week after. Apologies, I will fix that before I put the slides up. And that's it. Thank you for coming. Thank you very, very much to our hosts, to Primal Base, to Binary District. This is, I've said it several times, it's such an incredible space. We're very, very pleased to be here. So yes, we are, as is tradition, heading out for a post-session beverage. You are all welcome to join us. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Before you, if I can get your attention for a couple of seconds, Ollie wants to say something and then I'll finish up and we ready.
That's a great thing, yes. So Thursday, now that you've done the lesson, who's interested in embarking on the foray of expanding string left pad and anything else they want to do? I know we had 3 at the beginning, but is this Thursday? 1,
Raise your hand.
2, 3.
Honestly, the
4.
classes are valuable to go. You don't
Okay,
know you
so all I will say is I'll leave it to you. Please RSVP on our website, cpplondonuni.com. And if you RSVP, then I will be more than happy to come down if the numbers are there. And if you RSVP, then it will make it more of a compelling argument for me. Additionally, yes, we have a special guest speaker next week, which is Peter Bindles, the author of Hipponox. He's going to be giving a very interesting talk, which I'm not going to reveal at this point because.
Actually, I think we should say. Do
you want to?
Yeah, I mean the idea is Peter Bindles, so a good friend, and he's working on a very basic 2D graphic library. So you can do hello world and simpler stuff in a much more appealing way. So not just, piece of text, hello world, but potentially the stuff that will be closer to, let's say, something like Mario. Yes,
The mouse got stuck with me.
So it's a very simple library, and the aim is basically to be for people who start. So you don't have to read like for 6 weeks before you're actually able to make a colorful background, but actually fairly quickly you should be able to start doing something very nice, very useful. Yeah, so that's the idea. He's coming to us because he's going to ACCU, and because decided to make a stopover in London, and next week he will be leading the class. And the classes, as I understand, will be at Mimecast.
At Mimecast. And so it's beginner friendly. It's beginner friendly C++. Yes, we will be hosting it at Mimecast very proudly. But again, huge thank you to Promulbase for hosting us this week. You know, if how that goes. If in future, you know, we can be back here, it'd be amazing. The view was incredible. We are blown away. We are truly blown away. But thanks so much. Tom's going to round off.
Yes.
And for those of you watching online, thank you again for participating as well.